Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 28th of March, comes to you from London. We start by looking at currencies, then we'll look at stock markets, commodities, some US tech stocks, and then last of all some UK stocks. And so we start with the dollar index. Dollar index is coming below the cloud. We were below the cloud last year on the medium-term chart, so this is just the beginning of a cycle in the medium-term trend where we're now bearish for the coming weeks and months, and we're seeing that in the short-term chart. We were waiting for a cross back up through this chart for us to be bullish again in the short term. And the key thing is on the weekly chart, we are just seeing here making lower lows, lower high, lower low. So we are just seeing some deterioration in the weekly chart. This 100 level is pretty critical, and at the moment we're now starting to come back through support. But we'd really want to see a few weeks below this support to be convinced that we're coming back. Of course, we've got cloud support here at about 95. We've got a downside target now of 94. That's about 6% downside from where we are. In fact, it's 5% downside. That's the target. So, and these targets here would be unwound at about 93 as well. So about 6% downside there would unwound those targets and would take us through this cloud. So the key thing is this just a setback, or is this beginning of a trend change? And the longer term trend normally wins. So at some point we'd expect that dollar strength to return. But for now, for the coming weeks, months, and certainly in the short term, the dollar is looking quite weak. Euro is looking stronger. We're seeing here we're above the cloud on the medium-term chart as well. So again, we were in a similar position last year at this stage in the cycle, but we are seeing that we are above the cloud, and also we're seeing that on the short-term chart. Upside targets here. These downside targets in the long term still hanging over us. So these charts are still bearish. We're below the trends here, both on the 1% and 0.5% chart. So it is still a bearish picture, even though we're seeing some short-term strength. Dollar weakness against the yen. So we're seeing here that's really kicking in. Yen strength at the moment, so that's quite key. This is dollar strength just kicking back in the last day, but it's been pretty weak. And looking at the sterling chart, sterling has been stronger against the dollar, coming back up through this daily chart quite convincingly as well, so similar to the euro as we might expect. We haven't certainly broken out of this sideways range yet. And whereabouts is that? We probably need to just sort of see where that range is. Probably about 127, 128 would be the level there that we'd need to see. So if we just take that chart a bit wider, we'll see that 127.50 is the range there, and the downside is about 120. So we've got this 7.5 cent range. The key thing is, will sterling break that level there and make a new high? So at the moment we're still bearish in the long term, but the medium and short term pictures are looking pretty bullish. Sterling stronger against the euro as well, and against the Swiss franc. We're seeing a little bit of an improvement there too. And against the Australian dollar, really quite a strong improvement, 165. We did have a lot of downside targets hanging over us. Those have been negated, so that's a good sign for sterling. But we do still have this target hanging over us, and that would only be negated with a rise above 167. So can this run be sustained? That's the big question. We're not bullish here on the medium-term chart yet. Looking at the S&P 500, we see the green candle. We opened lower and closed higher, and we see that on the 60-minute chart where we opened low yesterday and managed to climb back up. So the market was weak at the start, recovered somewhat, but it's certainly not taken us out of this trend. So we are seeing short-term weakness in the markets at the moment, as much as 2 or 3% downside, and that might be a healthy correction, allowing us to run again. But the medium and long-term chart's still very bullish for the S&P 500. So US markets looking pretty good in the medium and long term, just short-term weakness showing through here on the Nasdaq. Again, quite a strong recovery yesterday, hitting real resistance around this 53.80 level. So that'll be interesting to watch today to see how we go with that. Dow Jones is also bearish below the cloud. similar downside targets, as is the Russell 2000. Looking at the S&P future, we're seeing just slight improvements this morning, and the Nasdaq looking set to open higher, and we are above the cloud here. So we might just see the US market climbing back. FTSE down this morning, and we're just seeing here we're below the cloud, but bullish in the medium and long term, and the same with the 250 in the medium and long term bullish, but downside pressure as we're below the cloud. The DAX just starting to get back above the cloud this morning, so we're seeing that strength coming through. And the Nikkei, that stronger dollar last night, the weaker yen, is improving things a little bit, up 1.14%. But we still have this big range on the Nikkei, which we've got to break out of. To 19,700 is the level that we need to break to really get running. Hang Seng is looking bullish still above the cloud, the one market in China, so the same thing in Shanghai, China and Hong Kong, the markets that are holding on to their bullishness, and the Sensex also holding on to its bullishness as well, so that's quite key. Looking at the Australian index, we've got multiple targets, 7 targets to the upside on that short-term chart. So really multiple thrust targets, lots of buying thrust there in the Aussie market, looking really interesting. And 3 upside targets here in the medium-term chart. Most markets have only got about 1. So here we're seeing this is really quite key. We're just really breaking to potential new highs, as much as 13% upside. 7% looks very likely. And long term, we're just about to activate a new 24% upside target. So Australia looking quite good at the moment. Brent crude, we've been pretty bearish on Brent. We're just back above the 51 level this morning. 51 is the pretty critical level on the daily chart, and we're just below that cloud. And as time goes on, we've got quite a lot of work to do to get the price back above that cloud. So it'll be quite interesting to see whether crude can recover. But we're just seeing some short-term strength creeping in, but we've got a lot of downside targets as well. This is a pretty bearish situation. Looking at WTI, again, it's starting to make through the cloud, but we still have 5 downside targets hanging over us, so that will be quite key. And just keep an eye on here. If we go to make new lows, that will become another target. That will become a 6th target, much lower. And we have activated this downside target. So crude looking pretty bearish. Nat gas just coming back below the cloud at the 303 level. So that's also looking quite interesting. Copper just below the cloud. And just looking at some of these other charts, things like coffee, we're bearish in the medium and short term. Wheat also just looking pretty bearish long term and short term. Gold we've talked quite a lot about, pulling back a bit this morning, but the charts are looking pretty good. We're bullish, bullish, bullish. We've got upside targets pretty well everywhere. We're just seeing a little bit of a pullback here today, but at the moment we are more bullish on gold, and the same with silver. And if we look at the 10-year bond, we're seeing here on 10-year treasuries 2.38%, so that's quite key as well. Apple bullish above the cloud on all 3 charts. Google is bearish in the short term, but long term is holding on. Amazon much the same as Google, just bearish in the short term. Facebook really holding its position. Got a new upside target of 146. These targets here, 141, 140.72, now pretty much met. And we're seeing again multiple targets to the upside. Facebook looking really interesting. Microsoft, again, multiple short-term upside targets, has been pretty flat of late, and Nvidia trying to put in a recovery here. This will be quite key to see whether we go and make new highs above 120. Quite a lot of work to do, but keep an eye on that. Looking at FTSE stocks, I go to my DTN IQ feed. I was running there on Bloomberg. The first thing I do is just rank the stocks to see where the performance is. Wolsey's the best performer this morning, up very strongly there, up 7.6%. Aviva also looking pretty good in the medium and long term. The short term target chart is still below, but we are seeing a new upside targets here as well. Standard Chartered, the one standout. Most banks looking quite bearish this morning, but Standard Chartered is actually trying to get back above the cloud and looking better and better, looking like we might be making a long-term transition there. Pearson, which has been pretty bearish of late, still below the cloud on all three. So even though you see a good performance in the morning, it may not be that in the context of the trend is anything to get excited about. Glencore bearish below the cloud, but the medium and long-term charts looking pretty good. Rio as well. WPP got hit last week with profits, but we are just seeing now we're recovering as well. Taking a look at the laggards, we're seeing here Capita down about 2% this morning, but holding its position in the short term above the cloud and the medium term, but the long-term chart is still pretty bad. Babcock looking pretty weak below the cloud on all three charts. Taylor Wimpey just starting to see. We're seeing quite a few house builders coming through this morning. Rangold were yesterday the strongest performer, down today. Hammerson's looking weak there in the short term, and the long-term chart just below the cloud as well. Barrett's we're seeing again just the long-term charts not quite got through yet. Anyway, that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.